Amazingly, in the last hours of day 3, we seem to have found the most important parts of Arkwright's mill. Mike, you lot have been making me promise after promise for the past 3 days. Have you delivered?
We have, Tony. Just look at this.
It's deep.
It's massive, isn't it? I said to you that if we had the wheel pit, we needed a hole 8 foot wide and 15 foot deep, and preferably 30 foot long. I can't do the 30 foot long because that goes over there, but that's 8 foot wide and it's 15 foot deep. In fact, we haven't got to the bottom, so we're missing the arch out of which the water would have flown. But we've got other material in there for a sluice gate, we think. That is the 1781 wheel pit.
All right, so if the wheel was in there, what about the steam?
Come over here.
Where are we going?
Just to here.
Yeah.
Do you remember these?
I do. I remember them on the first day, that lovely arch. The first exciting thing we found.
We now think this is the site of Arkwright's 1781 steam engine he tried to use to power textile machinery.
But if that was his very first engine, that was the one that didn't work properly.
It was.
So why is it still here?
Well, it was positioned in the middle of the mill so it could run the line shafting to power the textile machinery that way.
Yeah.
It didn't work, so what it looks like they've done is they've reused it for pumping water from the lower reservoir through the well there and out onto a spillway into channels running that way.
Arkwright's mill led the rise of the cotton mills in Manchester, making the city the cradle of the Industrial Revolution. The factory thickened the air with smoke and noise, dominating the lives of the poor. Arkwright's mill was also the site of innovative technology that we've managed to reveal in our 3 days. This is how we think our mill worked. An artificial water system drove the machinery. An engine pumped water between the lower and upper ponds, pushing water over a water wheel. It was a radical system for its time, but not as radical as the failed system it replaced. In 1781, Arkwright first installed a steam engine to drive the machinery directly. It didn't work. But this technology did inspire others who eventually succeeded, and within decades had taken over and mechanised British industry. How significant a find is this?
This is monumental. This is what we've been looking for. This is the first time somebody has tried to apply steam to textile machinery.
So this isn't just archaeology, this is history.
This is where the modern world begins.
Might there have been a chapel in this area here? Sometimes you pray for a day 4. Phil?
Yeah.
We've come to have a look at what you're doing.
Wow, you will not be disappointed. Come and have a look at this.
Ooh,
Isn't
oh,
it?
look at these.
Gorgeous floor, eh?
Fantastic.
But we're actually beginning to get an idea now of what the site is all about. You know, we had so much trouble finding whether this was a wall or not. We've now got it continuing right over towards the digger, so it definitely runs that way.
And it's massive, isn't it?
It is absolutely massive. But you see, on the corner, we've got a wall coming across there. It then returns round there. So what we've got on the corner here is either a turret or perhaps a toilet tower. Well, you know, they had to go somewhere, didn't they? You know,
Right by the stream, isn't it? It's right by the stream.
Mind you, posh floor for a lab.
Well, exactly. Of course, these tiles are original, but they've actually been relayed. You can see that the pattern doesn't actually marry up. But you can see, I mean, somebody obviously thought, well, there's some nice tiles, we'll have them. You can't blame them.
Hang on, Phil. If you're saying that this wall goes all the way back, well, to here at least.
At least.
Yeah.
And could be much bigger. Well, Mick, we're talking about a heck of a size for a building.
Yeah, and very posh with this plinth along the front.
So are we talking about a manor house or a posh residence?
Well, let's stick with a posh residence. And if the abbot's going to come and live here, and he's got a nice big building looking down the valley with either a little turret in the corner or a loo in the corner, that strikes me as really high quality accommodation, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Of course, it could extend under your house.
Yeah, it could easily.
yeah.
I don't think I like the sound of that.
House has got to go.
Yeah. This building certainly would have been very impressive, bigger than anything we expected. It had 2 ranges out the back and was huge. In terms of size, there is one good comparative site. This is what it may have looked like. King's Manor in nearby York. It really is huge. Look at that lawn, Barbara. You'd hardly know we've been here, would you? Just one slight downside, this huge hole here, but I'm afraid that's what happens when you get a 600-year-old abbot's house discovered in your paddock. How do you feel about that?
I think it's fantastic. I had no idea the structure was so substantial. It's far bigger than we ever imagined. Far bigger. It's brilliant.
We also imagined a simple story of there being a chapel with a few lay brothers' houses, and that would be it. It's a bit more complicated than that.
The story of Chris and Barbara's farm certainly is complicated. For 400 years, the monks of Fountains Abbey ran it as a farm, a grange. In the 1300s, they built a huge house and rented it out as a manor house. In the late 1400s, it's likely to have come back to the abbey for the use of Abbot Hughley. In the 1600s, Chris and Barbara's current buildings began to spring up as the older medieval buildings were knocked down. Their buildings bear the signs of the upheaval from 500 years ago when the monasteries were dissolved. Right now we're running out of time. The villagers who invited us here are turning up to see what we've been able to discover about Harold's Field. And in Matt's Trench, we're nearly ready to tell them. We're down deep enough to find the floor of this building.
Oh, at last! Excellent. What is it? What are they made of? That's stone.
Yeah, it's not sandstone. These are harder. These are limestone, I guess.
Strange thing, it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be lower than the bottom of the wall there, doesn't it?
The church and manor house were probably built by the same stonemasons. But can we now say which bits of the manor house we've been digging up?
I think what we're looking at here is the doorway into a 12th century tower. I mean, it is magnificent. Inside you've got the floor, and then you go out through the doorway, over the threshold.
That's that big stone down there.
That's that big slab there. And then you're outside the building.
Yeah.
And then our trench turns right and goes down the hill. And what the trench has done is cut through a range of buildings along that side, which are later 13th century, and I think probably are likely to be a stable block. They've got a central sort of walkway going through.
We've got no later 13th century pottery from there anyway, have we? So it's not domestic.
No, I don't think it is.
So we know these big earthworks, sketched long ago in Harold's Field, are not the remains of Harold's Saxon hunting tower. And we can now reveal to the villagers what was under the lumps and bumps. The main building we unearthed was a Norman fortified tower house, likely to have been 3 stories high. Next to it there was a stable block, and these earthworks are likely to be a courtyard with ancillary buildings set around it. Encircling the hill was this deep ditch, and the impressive route in was across this causeway, with the creek on one side and a large lake of spring water on the other. This was the home of the local lord, but not the centre of power as it was in Harold's day, because in Norman times their base was at Chepstow Castle down the road. But what I hoped for was something to link this field with Harold. Did we get any pre-conquest pottery?
We've got some of the earliest medieval pottery ever found in Wales.
Really?
It's very exciting.
But is any of it proof that the Saxons were here?
We've just got a fragment out now. It could well be, pre-Norman, almost certainly, but...
Which bit's that?
It's a very small piece there. Right?
It's not too fanciful then to say that this could be from the time of King Harold?
No, not at all, because we know it's that much earlier in the sequence.
Well, it's not much, but finding this from a time when there simply wasn't much pottery feels like discovering the Holy Grail. This is chaff-tempered ware, and it's Saxon. I can hardly believe it. We can tell the locals that we found evidence of activity here just before the Norman conquest. And for me, it's proof enough that Harold was here. Our historian Sam is convinced that Harold would have built his hunting lodge on this important hill, intending it to stand out as a symbol of new power to anyone arriving in the creek below. So basically what we've discovered is that this is a really classy place,
Yep.
and if you didn't know it already, you're really posh people to live here.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name's John Gator. Time Team is fan-funded by Patreon. This vital support helps us to make new episodes. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models and masterclasses, plus lots more.